Hey everyone, what's going on? Jeff here from Films at Home, and in today's video, we're going to talk a little bit about the state of physical media here in 2021. I've never really done a video like this, but I really want to talk about the physical media market as a whole. I want to cover the sales and how things are trending, some of the trending topics like manufacturing delays and consolidation of different studios for physical media, and really where I view the future and how I think this is going to go into the next several years. So a little bit of like a State of the Union address from my own opinion on how physical media is going and really some of the trends that I think that you all as collectors and enthusiasts should be aware of. Today's video is sponsored by Morning Brew. I'm super appreciative of Morning Brew for supporting this video. They have been an excellent resource for me since I signed up for their email newsletter. Prior to having Morning Brew, I would usually wake up in the morning, kind of aimlessly browse the internet, social media, nothing really productive happening. And since I've signed up, now I kind of start my morning and I get the Morning Brew delivered right to my inbox. It has a bunch of business news, tech, finance, world news, economy, all the good stuff that honestly as a marketing person, as a businessman, someone who works in the business world is really important to me. I've also been learning a lot about technology and new technology through the Morning Brew newsletter. So for example, I just learned the other day that apparently Facebook is making a new set of smart glasses with Ray-Ban, sort of like Google Glass. I had no idea that was happening, but as somebody who's interested in tech, it is important to stay up to date on these things. And it's also very interesting because they have these nice kind of thought pieces. As a remote worker myself, somebody who does work from home full time now, they had a really interesting piece on how remote work is affecting employees and companies. And it really gave me some interesting insight into, how this is all working for me since it's very, very new. So really, if you're looking for a nice snapshot of the business world, finance, tech, the economy, there's really no reason not to sign up for Morning Brew. It takes less than 15 seconds to sign up for their newsletter. It's very quick. I did it myself and I've been enjoying it immensely. And you can sign up today by clicking the link down in the description. Subscribes you immediately, and that's it. You'll get great news delivered to your inbox every morning from Morning Brew, and I think that you'll really appreciate it over all those other spam emails that you probably wake up to every morning. So thank you to Morning Brew for sponsoring this video. I really appreciate their support of the channel. It's going to go a long way in helping me make more videos like this and doing more research and spending more time. So I appreciate their support, and please, if you want to support my channel, support them by subscribing in that link down in the description. So I'm going to break this video up into 3 parts. First part being sales. We're going to talk about how the sales are, how the markets are trending, and some things that I'm seeing, and some comparisons I'd like to make to let you all know that the sky is not really falling on physical media. Then I'm going to dive into some of the trends and some of the things we're seeing with manufacturing into the different studios and what's happening in that world behind the scenes that you may not be aware of. And then finally, I'll cover sort of what the future looks like. So a bit of a 3-part video here, starting with sales. So physical media sales in 2021 have been very interesting because, believe it or not, we're actually trending towards more DVD sales than Blu-ray or 4K over the past couple of years. The narrow margin of 4K and Blu-ray releases is actually shrinking, believe it or not, and DVD is actually growing. So it's a very interesting trend because there's clearly, there's this movement out here where there's quality and quality matters and people want to buy 4K and Blu-ray releases for the best audio and visuals. But I think there's still a large majority of the collector audience who's just looking to own movies on physical media. And I also think there's a large majority, especially in the United States, at least this is where I'm looking at the sales numbers, they're easiest to get. In the United States, almost 150 million Americans don't have access to internet. And so if you want to watch movies, you're probably looking to buy DVDs and maybe buy a DVD player. It's pretty cheap. You can get a DVD player for 20 bucks. Maybe you can buy DVDs for $5 at Target, and you can enjoy a movie with your family without needing access to those streaming services. Now, one interesting thing is that I do believe that most of the people without internet access, and this is not a complete 100% truth, but a lot of that is going to be in kind of lower income areas where it's still been hard to build out infrastructure and things like that. So in those areas, if you're talking about lower income in the United States, DVD makes perfect sense. You're not going to want to spend $25 or $30 on a 4K release. You're going to enjoy your DVD movie. Even if you buy a new release, it may only be $15 now. You're going to save a lot more money. And I think that makes sense why so many people are still buying DVD. So if you look at sales numbers for total physical media, this is DVD, Blu-ray, and 4K. it's still about $30 million a week, which gets you to a $1.5 billion annual market. Pretty big numbers, right? Of that, Blu-ray and 4K, that's still about 1/3 of the market. So it's about $500 million for those two formats. And that's pretty good, right? But you may be thinking, based on articles about how physical media is dying and the decline, that it could be really, really bad news for us. But one comparison I want to make is to vinyl records, because if you read the news, watch videos, go on social media, everybody's talking about the resurgence of vinyl and how important that's been to the music industry and how they're really paying attention. And all these artists, Taylor Swift, Billie Eilish, Dua Lipa, you name it, all the big artists of the last few years, they're all putting out vinyl records. Vinyl records have been a hugely popular thing. Target and other stores are carrying vinyl records in store. And so vinyl is clearly seeing this resurgence. It's very clear that it's there. But if you look at the sales numbers, vinyl records only accounted for about $230 million worth of sales last year. So that's only half of what Blu-ray and 4K do, and it's only about 1/6 of what the total physical media market is doing for movies. So when you think about that, sure, vinyl is going up and to the right, and it's still growing each year, but it will likely flatline at some point because it's catered towards collectors and physical media enthusiasts and high-tech enthusiasts and people who believe it gives the best audio quality. While Blu-ray and 4K hit the same markets, and they're still double what vinyl is. So even though they're declining, I guarantee there's somewhere in the middle where those two kind of flatline. Maybe it's 400 million, maybe it's 350 million, but either way, if you look at it, the music industry has been really enthused with the vinyl record sales, and they're getting a ton of publicity, while physical media, movies, and TVs are doing twice as much, 6 times as much with DVD, and they're not getting the same press. So it's just an interesting, it's because of the percentages, but it's still a very, very large market, and there's no reason why you wouldn't still see DVD, Blu-ray, 4K in stores. Not going to be as wide a selection, but they'll still be carried because it's a huge market. One other thing you'll notice with vinyl, and I think this is where Blu-ray and 4K are headed, is that there's a lot of these collector's edition, limited edition vinyl records. Record Store Day is a big push for vinyl, and they're huge for collectors, and I think that's where Blu-ray and 4K moves into that niche. They're less mainstream on those formats, and they become more of a collector's item, a limited edition item for people who really want the quality, but the market is definitely still there. So the sky is not falling, because if vinyl's doing this well, Blu-ray and 4K certainly still have a spot in that same market. There's sort of a Venn diagram of like vinyl collectors, Blu-ray, DVD, 4K collectors, and somewhere in the middle, there's still a very large market, a crossover. So I think you'll be seeing sales doing just fine. They may continue to dip 10 to 15% for another year or two, but I do think you'll start to see them flatline and hit a solid number, and then maybe we may even get an increase. So those are the sales numbers, and I just want to put that in perspective because it really has been a tale of two formats where vinyl has been touted as this new great thing, and realistically, it is a tiny, tiny percentage of music industry sales. They are way over-indexed in streaming, the same way that home entertainment is, but yet nobody talks about it in that same way. Clearly, the Spotifys, the Pandoras, Apple Music, like those have won the overall war for market share, but you still hear about vinyl all the time, and even CDs still sell hundreds of millions of dollars a year. So it's just an interesting comparison I wanted y'all to note. The other great thing about the format is that every major distributor is now onto the 4K world. So Criterion was kind of the last holdout, but now there isn't really a single distributor or studio who hasn't embraced 4K. It's very clearly been accepted as a format. It clearly is doing enough sales to generate interest by the studios and by other distributors, the Shout Factories, the Kino Lorbers, the Blue Underground, Arrow Video, all these guys who are doing 4K, and Criterion finally joining really will do a lot for the collector market, I think. If Criterion keeps doing 4K releases and people pick them up, then more of those Criterion collectors may come and buy some of these other mainstream 4K releases. could help grow the market. But it's nice to see, because Criterion obviously is a massive player in the world of physical media, and them accepting the format should help with sales. So that's your overlook of kind of sales in the market and where things are headed. So hopefully that helps put that into perspective. But the other thing to note is sort of what's going behind the scenes in the industry. And that's where things have been very interesting the last few years. Now, one thing you'll see is a ton of consolidation, and that's going to continue to happen here in the physical media market. Now, studio distribution services was a big consolidation effort, and that was between Warner Brothers and Universal. So they're working together, they're pumping out releases, they're handling international on one side, domestic on the other side in the US. They're really trying to work together to bring down manufacturing costs, and they can increase the margins on their discs, and then hopefully make a little bit more money and justify more physical media in 4K restorations, things of that nature. So I think it makes a lot of sense, because you're sharing resources across different companies. All these companies have people that do these things, but by sharing them together, working together as an industry, that's going to help the whole home entertainment market get better. So while that's helped, you'll still notice that there's a ton of delays on major titles. The Columbia Classics Volume 2 set was delayed. Lots of Sony titles have been delayed. There's been issues getting Warner Brothers discs like Justice League. There's been issues getting discs like The Thing that just came out from Universal. A lot of these have been really short printed, small quantities. They haven't been able to pump out the mass production that they need to for some of these higher end releases that are clearly going to generate a lot of sales. And the reason for that is because there's been a ton of outsourcing and consolidation happening in resources. So the compression and authoring department, right, which really works on finalizing discs and how they're going to go from digital transfer over to the physical disc. That has been outsourced to basically one department in Warner Brothers, and Disney, Lionsgate, Warner, Criterion Collection, and Paramount are all using that small department to try to get their discs out. So they're now asking a much smaller department to do much more work and with less resources. And that's the reason why you're seeing some delays on that end of the spectrum. But also when it comes to replication in the manufacturing of discs, apparently, based on what insiders have told me, they used to have about 6 to 8 weeks to pump out discs. And so they would have a much longer lead time, almost 2 months in some cases. And now the studios are only giving them about 4 weeks. And that's why you're seeing delays, because they're being asked to work twice as fast, but again, without the additional resources needed to do that, which is why you're seeing these delays or very short printed initial releases where it may be hard to get your hands on some of these popular 4K and Blu-rays within the first few weeks until manufacturing can ramp up and finally get more copies out to stores and online retailers. So that's really the issue behind it all, is even though they're consolidating together all these different studios and outsourcing things, but not really adding enough resources into the physical media department. And that's something I know lots of people who work in those departments have been struggling with. They are stressed out to the max, and I appreciate all the work they do because they're being overworked and asked to do a ton. But when you see delays and things, I try not to get too upset, because I realize the reality behind it is that there are, a handful of people trying to do 1 million things, and they're just trying to keep their heads above water. And so I don't get too disappointed with delays. Of course, it sucks. I wish they'd put more resources in, but I think with COVID also helping to really slow down the supply chain and really wrecking some international commerce and stuff like that, it's really slowed things down across the board. And then, God forbid, somebody in a manufacturing plant or a replication studio or something gets COVID, and then the plant, that's shut down. There's no manufacturing happening. There's been a lot of reasons for delays, but I'm hoping as COVID subsides, maybe as physical media gets some more support and more consolidation from the studios, more resources, this will get better. But right now they're definitely in a growing pains time, and COVID has not helped that at all. So that's sort of what's going on behind the scenes, and I thought that was important to let everyone know. These delays are not just because people are being lazy, or the directors are holding things up, or the studios don't want to put the effort into a certain release. They are putting effort in. They just need to get more resources out there. And there have been layoffs at places like Warner Brothers, and COVID obviously has hurt the entertainment industry huge. So once everything comes back together and they can get their feet under them again, I feel good that this will stop happening, and hopefully they can get a quicker process together with more resources to fix all those delays that you've been seeing everywhere industry-wide, regardless of studio. So then the last thing I want to talk about in this video is sort of what's the future for physical media and where do I think it's heading. And I alluded to this a little bit earlier in the video, but I really do think that especially Blu-ray and 4K is going to be centered on collectors. It's going to become a collector's market, much like vinyl has. It's collectors and high-end technology enthusiasts. I don't expect average Joe on the street to walk into a Walmart and walk out with a handful of Blu-ray or 4K discs. If anything, I would expect, based on the numbers, that average Joe walks into Walmart and maybe grabs a handful of $5 DVDs out of their DVD bin. That's much more common than somebody going in to buy Blu-ray and 4K. And so I think you'll start to see more limited editions. Lionsgate has been doing this at Best Buy with a ton of their releases, doing re-releases of 4Ks in collectible steelbooks. Things like the Columbia Classics set are clearly geared towards collectors. And then of course your independent, your distributors, your Arrow Video, Shout Factory, Criterion, Kino Lorber, those types of guys, Blue Underground, they're definitely catered towards a collector market, and they're a little bit pricier, but they include all the special features and extras like posters and sometimes CDs of the soundtrack and booklets and all this stuff that goes with them that really your average consumer probably doesn't care about, but your collector does, and that's what drives those companies. They're based on collectors, really, first and foremost. They exist because of collectors. And so collectors are what's going to drive this market, and you don't have to be a huge collector. Somebody who buys 10 movies a year is still probably in the 1% of all people in the United States for physical media spend. If you're spending a couple $100s a year, you're probably up there. So not everyone has to have 2,000, 3,000 movies, and don't feel like you have to buy every movie that comes out to support physical media. Just buying a few titles every month here and there, that supports physical media, and you're doing much more than the average person. So I don't want anybody to get a complex and start budgeting for $1,000 a month on physical media because they need to support it, and you have to buy every release or physical media is going to die. That's not the reality. That's not happening right now. And I think that just the more we spread the word and educate people on the benefits of the quality and, owning a title, physically owning a title versus having it on streaming or even on an on-demand video service. When you talk about censorship and all this other stuff that's happening, episodes of The Office being removed from Comedy Central, well, if you have the box set, you can watch any episode you want at any time. There's those benefits to physical media, and again, not everyone has to have a collection of 2,000, but if you have 50 discs, you're still doing better than most people out there for sure, and you're helping support the cause. So that's really where things are headed. It's going to be collectors, it's going to be more limited edition releases, it's going to be, big name 4K titles that they know are going to sell. That's what's going to come to 4K. And then the Arrow Videos, the Shout Factories, the Criterions, Kinos, Blue Underground, they're going to keep driving the niche market, and they're going to take on some of these 4K releases that maybe not everybody would be interested mainstream, but they know they can make a solid, buck on and keep their label going. So that's where you're going to get your more niche stuff. The studios will definitely continue to focus on the big name releases and hopefully do some more restoration. I know that Warner Brothers is working on titles for 2022. They have a nice slate of 4K catalog titles. Paramount continues to do nice work. Sony continues to do great work with Columbia Classics and lots of other catalog titles that have been coming out. And Universal is doing a bunch as well. So, everyone's really contributing here and nobody's slowing down other than maybe Disney. But even then, they've been going through the vault and getting out 4K releases, even though they're not doing new restorations. I could see them start to license out some of the Fox catalog to other studios so that they can get some more money out of 4K, although clearly the focus is going to be on Paramount Plus, Disney Plus, those types of things. But it is what it is. That's the reality in today's world. Music is focused on streaming. Movies and TV also focused on streaming, but there's still a very, very healthy market for physical media. And if we learned anything from ebooks and the Kindle craze of 10 years ago, when everyone had to have a Kindle and ebooks were the big thing, and the Nook and everybody was buying these e-readers, those kind of died out. Everyone went back to physical books. And there's a reason for that. People like to own things and hold things in their hands. And I think you'll see the same thing here with physical media once people start to realize the limitations and how extended they're getting on their streaming with 25 different streaming channels to pay for, eventually those people may just start picking up their favorite movies. And like I said, if they grab 2 or 3 movies a month or even 10 movies a year, that is likely 10 more than they bought the year before, and that's helping drive the market. So that's good news. So that is the video. I talked a lot. I know I talked a lot, but I appreciate you guys listening to this. It was a very long video. I tried to get all this information out there. I am seriously considering like doing a podcast, which I record on video so that I can do some more of these like longer form videos and maybe do some interviews, because I know it's hard to put together a 20-minute video with me just talking and you paying attention. But I appreciate anyone who's made it this far and everyone who's listened, and even if you skipped through, hopefully this was interesting and you learned something in one of the 3 parts. But just want to say thank you again to Morning Brew. They sponsored this video. They helped me take the time to do all this research, put this all together, edit this, really spend a lot of time on it. So I always appreciate sponsors like that, and I hope you guys will too as well. So find the link down in the description, subscribe to them, you'll get great news. Like honestly, I'm not unsubscribing anytime soon. I really like what they send me every morning. So that's it for the video. Make sure you subscribe and have your notifications on for future videos. Also make sure you follow me on all my social media channels. Links are down in the description, and check out all the other links for ways you can support my channels and different channel partners, which help support my content. So really appreciate you guys watching. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Stay safe and stay healthy out there, and I'll talk to you soon.